Get ready. This is a good one. These are red dot optics tips with Louis Chirino from Holosun Optics. Hey, welcome to Gun Talk Nation. This Gun Talk Nation is brought to you by Armscor, Timney, Remington, and Safariland. Today on Gun Talk Nation, we've got Louis from Holosun. Holosun Optics, it's one of those companies, and we were kind of talking about it earlier. It's like, it feels like you guys haven't been around that long, but then it also feels like everybody knows you. You guys are just doing a lot of cool things.
Yeah, I mean, we started in 2013, so, I still consider us part of the new kids on the block, but, we've been able to make a little bit of a splash, and, people are paying attention, and I think we're doing things right, and I think that's where, we're getting that recognition finally. Yeah.
Well, and you were telling me that you kind of come from a background of, or your owner comes from a background of being that engineer, never being satisfied with the product or the specs, or I guess knowing it could always be better. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I hear the complaint every now and then, hey, you guys came out with this product and then a year later it's completely different or it's changed. And yeah, you're correct. I mean, we don't want to sit back and say, hey, we did a good product and we're just going to leave it there. If we can make changes and make it better where it makes sense to do it, yeah, we're going to continue to try to push and make that product as best as we can.
So everybody that I know is looking at red dots on pistols these days. This isn't, at this point, it's not even a new concept. It's almost, we're getting to the point of like, wait, you carry a gun with just iron sights? It feels that way. I mean, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What do you think happened? Because you've seen this progression since in the last, 8 years or so of where we were and now where we are today. What do you think made that happen?
I mean, we started seeing, red dots on pistols become a little bit more predominant, 2018-ish. Mm-hmm. Is when we started seeing a lot of the guys and more companies doing optics ready guns and stuff like that. And, I internally, I was like, hey, I think 2020, this is going to be somewhat of a normality. A lot of people didn't think it would move that fast, but, here we are in 2021 and, already in 2020, we had we were having compact pocket carry guns already optics ready as well. And there's even a category of optics for that size as well. So it's definitely moving a lot faster than what I think people thought. It just makes sense, though. I mean, it's kind of the same thing of the revolution of the red dot on the rifle. I mean, it's kind of crazy. I still deal a lot with LE, and I still run into agencies that are still running iron sights on a rifle, which today that's probably like taboo.
Right.
But I just think, when you associate and understand the pros of running the red dots, and the technology has definitely caught up. I mean, putting a red dot on a reciprocating slide of a gun, it's a hostile environment, but
right.
They're holding up. The technology's caught on. So I think that's what's helping fuel, the progress of, it being just normal standard.
It's actually not a new idea to put a red dot on a pistol. It's been being done for decades. The competitive shooters have been doing it for a very long time. And you're right. The optic is riding on top of the slide as the slide slams back and forth, forward and backwards as you shoot. It's violent. Yeah. I mean, this is not easy for something that is an optic, has lenses, has electronics, has a battery. And I think you're right. We're getting to the point where now you can put it on top of there and it doesn't fall apart or just turn off or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely, the technology has definitely progressed considerably. I mean, we can spend hours talking about the science behind it. I mean, like you said, just the battery alone. I mean, there's so many things going on that you don't think are going on that it definitely takes a toll on the system. But, luckily, as I said, technology has caught up and we're seeing, products take the abuse and keep running, 20, 30, 40,000 rounds without an issue.
Yeah, it's impressive. I always put it this way. When given the choice as a competitor, if you're an open division competitor, which basically kind of means anything goes to a point, they put optics on their guns, whether that's a rifle or pistol or whatever, because they're shooting faster, they're shooting more accurately. And same thing goes for the elite special forces military guys who they don't care. I mean, if it's pink and has Barbies on it and it makes them, be able to survive, they'll put it on the gun.
Well, and it's funny you talk about that. Every now and then I'll hear a shooter talking about, I don't like it because I feel like I'm cheating. I've heard that term used quite a bit.
That's interesting.
And the funny thing is, the example you just gave of the shooter, of a competition shooter, why is a competition shooter doing it? Or why is an elite, force guy doing it? They need, or they want the edge, and whatever I can use to give me the edge to perform my job as best as possible, I would want it. And I think anybody else logically would as well, or naturally. So why wouldn't you take advantage if the technology is allowing you to do it?
It's an interesting thing. I don't want to do it because I feel like I'm cheating. That's a crazy thing to say. Like,
I've heard it more often than what you think.
That's crazy, because you think about it, like, no, if I am in a competition and it's legal to do, then I'm going to do it. If I'm in in fear for my life, saving my life or others, whether that's a civilian or a law enforcement type person, I'd like to cheat every way possible. When I was a kid, my dad said, don't get in fights, don't pick fights, that kind of thing. But if you find yourself in a fight and you're getting your butt kicked, I'm okay with you finding the biggest, hardest thing next to you and picking it up and hitting somebody across the head with it. Seriously. He told me that. And I never had to do that, but I always knew, okay, so that's an option if you really are in trouble, right? So, I mean, yeah, you want the cheat code for whatever you can do if somebody's trying to hurt you or your family. Now, I know you've been doing this. You work with law enforcement. You've been to a lot of ranges and classes and that type of thing. It's interesting with optics, the complaints people have, or it's not really even a complaint. Sometimes it's a concern that's unfounded. What kind of stuff have you heard of this? These are, I like to call them make-believe what ifs, right? Well, I don't like it because what if this, what if that? Have you heard some of those weird things that people will bring up?
Probably one of the biggest things that I see as far as, somebody physically shooting a red dot, you'll have guys, you'll have a shooter that's been shooting iron sights for 20 years of their life. So their muscle memory and their presentation, it's natural already at that point. And unfortunately, at the current moment, you can't use the same presentation you can with the red dot. You have to make a slight adjustment because the dot is sitting at a slightly different plane. Some people, they want to fight the edge. Well, I don't want to relearn how to present and do again. Or they try to shoot the red. They're like, well, this thing is horrible because I can't find it. Well, you still have to train and learn it. You still have to put some time. It doesn't matter how well of or proficient of a pistol shooter you are. If you've never shot a red dot, the majority of the time, you're not just going to take and present it and find it immediately. You've got to learn how to adjust and readjust your presentation. So now it becomes more natural, and you got to practice it at the end of the day. The other thing that we hear, not from a shooting standpoint, but red dots, especially with the battery situation,
right?
We've heard guys that, well, for example, Holosun in 2020, one of the changes that we did was we got rid of everything of an undermount battery system. We went to side mount battery tray.
Easier to swap out the batteries,
correct,
that kind of thing.
And, but the main reason why we did it is not what you'll hear. We hear a lot of times, I hear a lot of people tell me, well, hey, that's great because I'm not going to lose my zero when I change my battery. And honestly, that's further from the truth because, if you look at a properly cut slide, or if you look at an optics ready slide from any, major manufacturer, when you put that plate on, you have three factors when it comes to the optic. You have the physical hole or the pocket, the screws, holes to lock the system down, but then you'll have these posts, what we refer to as indexing or recoil lugs. Some of them have two in the front, some have two in the front, two in the rear. And those posts serve two purposes. A, we call them recoil lugs because they're there to absorb the recoil from the slide. Screws are not designed to do that. They're not designed to take lateral shear strength.
The screws by themselves would shear off.
Correct. Over time, they'll basically stretch and you'll shear them off.
Mm-hmm.
But the other purpose is we refer to them also as indexing lugs. It's so every time you take that optic off and mechanically put it on, it snaps or falls back into the exact same spot.
Yeah.
So there's really no shift. Now, if you have a slide that's been cut and does not have those indexing recoil lugs, then yes, I can definitely see somebody worried about, well, I clocked it in and I torqued my system down and now, a year later I got to change my battery. It's not going to fall mechanically in the same spot. But to me, that's more of, well, that's just an improperly cut slide.
Yeah. You guys have optics that have different color reticles.
Yes.
Talk about color options and why.
So in general, as far as Holosun products, we offer 3. We originally came out with the red reticles, which is pretty standard. 2017, we introduced our green dot systems. And then 2019, we did something a little bit different and we did our gold dot systems. From a pistol optic standpoint, right now, we only offer red and green. We haven't done the gold yet. But it's one of those questions ever since we did the gold, especially people ask, well, why the colors?
Mm-hmm.
And my the initial reaction I tell everybody is options.
Sure.
And personal preference. But there is a science behind why we did it. When you look at the 3 colors, red in general is one of the most difficult colors for the human eye to physically pick up. That's why I tell people that's the reason why we always pay more for red cars and insurance than any other one. Then you go green. Green is the easiest color for the human eye to pick up. The human eye sees more shades of green than all of the shades of color combined. But now we go into gold. Well, why gold?
Why gold? Yeah.
So root color of gold is yellow. Yellow has 2 attributes. Number 1, it's the brightest color to the human eye, but it is colorblind neutral. 27% of all shooters for the 17 senses were somehow colorblind. So you may have difficulty seeing color red. Somebody might have difficulty seeing green. Somebody might have difficulty seeing both, but the human eye will always see yellow as yellow.
Yeah.
And for me, I always make the same statement that my justification of, did this really make sense, was ever since we introduced it at the 2019 SHOT Show, every single show that I've done, every day, at least 4 to 5 times a day, somebody will be in the booth and they just scream out of nowhere. And we're like, and it always catches me by surprise, but I turn around and you see them and you see a grin just from corner to corner. And I'm like, are you looking at the gold? Yes, I'm colorblind. I can see it.
Oh, wow.
And it's to me, it's quite satisfying to see somebody that, we can help them with that aspect. But I mean, aside from the science behind it, I tell people, listen, the science is cool, but it really gives you the option and it's a personal preference thing. Green, again, is the easiest color to the human eye. You ask me, I don't like the green. I find it difficult. I wash it out easy for myself. I prefer the red or I prefer the gold as an option, but it gives the shooter an option to, hey, I like this setup better. Or if you're in a professional environment, it gives you some options too. I've seen a lot of agencies that, will use some of our green or our gold systems, for example, to run as an extra layer of what I call safety. And what I mean by that is, for example, let's say, in the last year, we had a lot of rioting issues due to the pandemic and our situation. So you're running a less lethal system. So, hey, the agency will say, well, you know what? We use all red dots. So we're going to put a green or a gold system on our less lethals. And what that helps the officer do is it's like a second safety check. Hey, I'm looking at a green or I'm looking at a gold reticle. Hey, less lethal.
Yeah. It just helps them remember what they're dealing with.
It helps. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything we can do to help those guys and gals out there when you're going, wait, am I using a gun or a less lethal option?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It gives,
sometimes they'll mount it on a different side of their body
So, I mean, if it's something that you need to address, depending, if it's an agency, if it's something they need to address, or they have a certain SOP they need to try to follow, we're just giving you that much more options. One of the things a term that I like to use all the time when it comes to Holosun is the products, the way we've designed it and some of the features, you don't have to adapt to the tool. The tool adapts to you. Just like what you mentioned before about the multi-reticle system. You know, you're a dot guy, I'm a ring guy. If you look at it from a working standpoint, if you take an agency example, you know, hey, if the agency wants to appeal, you know, your request and mine, normally you have to look at two manufacturers, two different style products. Maybe they have different warranty protocols. You know, my product, one system allows you to do both.
Yeah.
So it addresses that in one way. A second reason why, for example, one agency, a major agency chose our product was for the same reason, multi-reticle. Why? They gave me the explanation. Hey, look, we're going into a situation that it's close quarters. You know, things happen very fast. So they will run their system with our ring dot because the ring is big.
Yep.
It helps you find it faster. So speed is on your side. Fast forward 8 hours later, and maybe they're going to do a night ops and they're running night vision. That ring reticle might be too bright, too much information. Okay, shut the ring off, run it as a dot only. And now the system is more catered to that specific job that you're doing and the requirements that you need. But what's the nice thing about it? You don't have to switch anything out.
Right.
The system changes to adapt to what you need. The third thing that I've actually seen, and this has been something that we've seen, especially with agencies, goes back to what I was talking about before about learning how to shoot with a red dot if you never have. I've found a lot of agencies that their requirement is a dot only.
Okay.
But even though they have that in place, they will actually purchase our multi-reticle system. And the reason why they do that is because when they put a new shooter on transitioning to red dots, they use the ring system, since it's bigger, easier to find, to get them to learn how to find it, present it, develop that muscle memory. Once that shooter is comfortable and they can present and find a red dot without any issue, then they shut the ring off and now they transition to them. Hey, now we're going to follow SOP. Now you're running dot only.
And what we're talking about, in case, I don't know if someone's listening going, what ring, dot, what are we talking about? I mean, multiple reticles in the same optic, and you can choose those reticles. And the ring system, which I've used in a variety of optics, and it is really great for what you're talking about, Lewis, is you're talking about a circle with a dot in the middle of it, essentially.
Correct. Yeah.
And that bigger circle, it's bigger. It's easier to see. So you're not searching for the dot, as people will say they're searching for the dot. Now you have this big circle, little dot in there. That's cool. Pyramyd Air is your #1 resource for everything airgun, from air rifles and pistols, BB guns, pellet guns, airsoft guns, plus everything you need to run them. Pyramyd Air has it all. From the Umarex Steel Storm to Crossman air pistols, get your new air gun or airsoft at pyramydair.com and use the code GunTalkNation to receive $10 off any $50 purchase. Also, Gun Talk Nation is brought to you by Timney Triggers. Get ready for hunting season. It's upon us, guys. With the Remington 7 Calvin Elite. No gunsmith needed, easy to install. The Model 7 Calvin Elite allows you to be more accurate with your rifle and provides a custom fit with adjustable shoes for precision, length of pull, cast, and height on your trigger. It's pretty cool. Find your new trigger at timneytriggers.com. Also, we are brought to you by Armscor, Rock Island Armory. They're kind of sister companies. The newest addition to their lineup is the Rock Island Armory STK-100, Rock Island's first ever striker-fired pistol. The STK-100 is 9mm. It has a 17-round capacity, but it's a solid aluminum frame, which gives it the advantages of a metal pistol for the price of polymer. The STK-100 also features an optics-ready slide and an extended beaver tail. Find out more at armscor.com. And then we have Remington Ammunition. That's right, Big Green is back. Remington's Golden Saber bonded defensive and tactical handgun ammunition features lead core hot bonded to a brass jacket, producing unmatched expansion and weight retention to keep you and your loved ones safe. Made in the USA, available in 4 popular calibers. Find out more at remington.com/handgun. Okay, so law enforcement, what's the trend on optics on guns? What are we seeing right now? What's the feedback?
I mean, you know, it's just like the shooter community in general. They're realizing that it's a tool that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I hate to say this, but a lot of law enforcement are not really gun people. You know, they carry the gun because it's a tool and it's a requirement for work, but a lot of, officers are not gun people in general, and maybe they don't train as much as we think, or depending, unfortunately, on some agencies. And, recently we've seen a lot of budget cutting and stuff like that, happen as well over the course of the last year and a half. Qualifying or training protocol is not there. So, pistol proficiency, you lose it a lot quicker than rifle. So it's one of those things that, you have to train much more on it. But if you're not training, then they're realizing that the red dot is an aid. It helps you, it helps you perform better.
In lieu of training, we really don't want to do the in lieu of training thing. We'd really like you to actually train and be really good. But the reality is, real world, big boy, there are budget cuts there, which tends to mean less training. I know probably the people listening to this know this, but I feel like I'd love to get that message out to the greater public of, like, when we talk about cutting budgets, they're not necessarily firing everybody. They're just making the officers practice less a lot of times.
No, exactly. Yeah. And that we do not want, the red dot can do wonders. I mean, I use this phrase all the time. I tell people, hey, I can, I've seen people do, wonders with an iPhone, but if I don't show you how to use the iPhone, it doesn't matter how much technology I put in your hand. If you don't know how to use it, you're not going to take advantage and use it properly. And the red dot is the same thing at the end of the day. I mean, if, red dots, I always tell people, red dots are not going to make you shoot better. They're going to make you shoot faster. That's the main difference. If you get somebody that shoots really good naturally on a pistol and you give them a red dot, they're not really going to shoot much more accurately. But what they'll notice in the practice is that, their on target time and their follow-up shots, they're going to get faster because the red dot helps that.
Yeah.
Yes, if you're not a proficient pistol shooter and somebody gives you a red dot for the first time, and as long as you can find it, you're going to be pleasantly surprised at how much better you're possibly going to shoot. But you still got to practice. I mean, at the end of the day.
It does. It definitely can be helpful with getting people proficient quicker on the gun. And actually, we don't, like you were talking, you're not that person who has been shooting iron sights for 2 decades and now you're having to figure out, how do I shoot with this red dot? I mean, if you're teaching a new shooter, a red dot on a pistol is a great way to do it. You don't have to talk about lining up iron sights. It's just very simple. Dot on target, press the trigger. So, Lewis, do you have, for those listeners out there, they're going, okay, what about tips? There's a lot of questions about how do I sight in, not how to sight in, but are there preferred, they talk about co-witnessing and they talk about mounting it. Do you have ways that you prefer to run the optic on the gun and kind of pro tips if somebody said, hey, do you have any tricks or tips for me?
Yeah. So, I mean, so for me personally, mount, as far as, physically mounting the red dot, I mean, obviously, we got to make sure, we're using, Loctite is key. Again, it's a very violent environment for the red dot. Obviously don't use red.
Red means your optic is permanently there pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So we definitely want to avoid that, making sure that's properly torqued down is important too. I mean, these are small screws and
that's a good point. And that's true for all optics. I think a lot of people go, oh, they're screws, tighten them. Well, there's an appropriate amount of torque. They're too little, it's going to come off. Too much, you could break the screws, or even perhaps not on the Holosun stuff, but depending on what the optic is, you torque them down too much and it could actually damage the optic or something like that.
You're correct. You bring up a very good point because there are some products, our products are all metal. But there are products out there that use like a polymer or some type of high strength plastic, which yes, you want to definitely take, if you gorilla wrench it down, you might cause something that you might not physically see the damage, but you might be stressing that product or doing something else that, definitely could cause an issue. So, torquing it down to recommended specs is definitely, recommended in all cases because we're taking into consideration, the manufacturer's going to take into consideration, not only it's on screw size dependency, but also on housing material too.
Yeah.
Will make a difference for sure. As far as the physical setup on a pistol specifically, when we talk about co-witnessing, me personally, I like to get it as low as possible in the glass. So again, going back to why am I running a red dot? The reason why I'm running a red dot, if you look at iron sight versus red dot on a pistol, iron sights, it's, it's FSF, front sight focus, front sight focus, front sight focus.
Right.
One eye open, one eye closed, and everything else is a blur. So why am I huge for red dots? Because you get rid of that. Now it's both eyes open. You're engaging, you're focusing on what you're engaging.
The target downrange.
Right.
Yep.
And you regain full peripheral vision again. So you regain situational awareness.
Yeah.
That's why for me, red dots in law enforcement is like an absolute no-brainer for what they do day to day. So because of that, the last thing that I want is my backup iron sights stuck in the middle of the glass, that they're always in my way, because I'm going to subconsciously go back to what I'm trying to avoid of why I want to run the red dot.
That's a good point. People will, and it's a preference thing, but I like what you're saying, because people go, I want to be able to see my irons through that. I'm like, well, yeah, but you don't want them occluding the lens. You don't want, and then your eye, you're right. Now you're going to have to fight it. Your eye's bouncing back and forth on the focus of the dot.
And especially if you're that 20-year iron sight shooter, you're just going to go back to habit. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So yeah, I want them as low as possible in the glass. Correct. The iron sights.
Maybe a whisper of iron sights.
Pretty much. Yeah. And then for me, going back to reticle choice, a lot of people ask me why I do it. My preferred reticle is actually the ring only.
Oh, okay.
I take the dot out of the equation. And why do I do that? Because I've noticed that I find myself, when I see a 2-minute angle dot, I mentally want to go into pinpoint mode.
You're searching for perfect.
Right. So what happened though? That's now slowing me down.
Yep. If
I was in a bullseye competition, absolutely. But from a carry gun perspective, when you think about it, I paint this picture all the time when I do demos, that, people hear our ring, 32 MOA. It sounds like a monstrosity.
It sounds
people
huge.
Are like, oh, this is absolutely enormous. That'll never work. And I always tell guys, I want you to do something. According to the statistics, the average engagement is 7 yards from a self-defensive standpoint.
21 feet.
So I tell people, grab a light switch, grab a wall socket, a wall plate in your house, go back 21 feet and use that ring and see how that ring compares to the wall socket at 21 feet. And what you're going to find is that the wall plate is actually slightly bigger.
No kidding.
It's almost the same size. So the reality of it is, my argument, I've told people all the time, I said, let me ask you a question. I go, if I can put 5 rounds in the size of a wall plate from a self-defensive standpoint, do you think that's accurate shooting? And the majority of the response is, yeah, that's really good.
Totally acceptable for self-defense stuff.
So I go, so then if you think about it, and again, at least myself, I'll use the term programmed, but it's from a self-defense standpoint, I'm going to shoot the biggest thing I can shoot. So I'm going to shoot center of chest.
Right.
And the average, width of somebody's chest is average 18, 20 inches.
So if you're in a 3x5 inch, little rectangle.
Exactly.
All good.
Exactly. So, and that's what the 32 MOA encompasses.
Wow. Yeah.
So it sounds big on paper, but in reality, it's not a big reticle. So I want the advantage of, I find it fast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still getting the accuracy that I need for the purpose that I'm using it for. But by me removing now the dot from the middle, I avoid me subconsciously going into pinpoint mode. And now hey, if it's in the ring, just go.
Just press trigger.
Just press a trigger and go, because you're on target.
Do you have a preference on color?
I do. Red or gold. I'm not a green guy.
Yeah.
For me, especially on a very sunny day, I live, in South Florida. So for us, it gets very bright. If I have a very light or a white background or something, I personally tend to wash out the green a little bit easier than the other colors. So I prefer the red or the gold if I'm doing any rifle stuff.
Yeah. Very cool. Lewis, thanks for being with us, man.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having us out here.
I like the tips. These are pro tips from somebody who's dealing with optics all the time. if you don't have an optic on your gun yet, you're probably thinking, well, okay, maybe I need to get on board with this. And the cool thing is pretty much all the new pistols coming out are optics ready. I mean, for the most part.
I have a projection.
Yeah.
And I project that by the beginning of 2023, I don't think we're going to have many manufacturers left offering non-optics ready guns. I think that'll just be the normality, because the reality of it is, if you're not on the optics bandwagon yet, if you don't think it's really for you yet, but you're shopping for a gun, buy an optics ready gun anyways. You don't need to run the optic to run the weapon. You can still run it without any problem. It's just, hey, when you're ready, you already future-proofed yourself.
Yeah. And then it's a gun that's not optics ready will go the way of the carry handle AR. Oh, that's good advice. All right. Very cool. That's it for us. We'll see you next time on Gun Talk Nation.